All right, baseball fans, welcome back. Get ready for another deep dive into the Roy Hobbs World Series action. Straight from sunny Fort Myers, Florida, I'm your host.
And I'm your expert analyst.
And we're here to break down all the excitement from November 13th.
Oh yeah, we've got a stack of game summaries.
And let me tell you,
It was a day for the history books.
we're talking blowouts, nail-biting finishes, and some absolutely incredible...
Individual performances.
I'll have you jumping out of your seat. Think SportsCenter,
But for vintage baseball.
the best vintage baseball around. So
Where do we even begin?
let's jump right into those offensive explosions.
Yeah, the ones that had the scoreboard lighting up like a Christmas tree.
Oh, yeah.
Some teams just clicked right from the first pitch. Like the 60s Oakville Golden A's. They just steamrolled the Tuscaloosa Tornados. Not once.
But twice,
With identical 22-5 victories.
back to back.
It's a level of offensive consistency you just don't see that often.
And they weren't the only ones putting on a hitting clinic.
No, not at all.
The 70s Washington Titans were in a league of their own.
Racking up 18 runs against the Minnesota crosstown traffic
And guess what? They did it again
in their second game.
against the same team.
Yeah, it's like they were playing a video game on rookie mode. But what I find really interesting is that these weren't just flukes. We saw this pattern of standout performances.
Across different teams.
Sure.
It's like these guys were in sync across different dimensions.
Yeah, we had Greg Bellin from the 70s Florida Yankees.
Jim Zitney playing for the 70s Asheville Sox.
And a few others.
All putting up almost identical stat lines.
4 hits, 2 homers, 5 RBIs.
And 3 runs scored each. It's like they all had a secret pregame huddle and decided to dominate in unison.
Really highlights how that individual talent can shine.
Even within a team sport.
And, makes you wonder, was it a particular pitching style that these batters were just feasting on, or was it just one of those days?
Where everything they hit.
Yeah, found a gap.
Okay, but it wasn't all just home runs and high scores. Some teams had to grind it out.
Oh, yeah.
And we saw some really clutch performances
Absolutely.
that had everyone on the edge of their seats.
The 70s Kent Mudhens pulled off a 10-9 victory over the San Antonio Texans. And it was a game.
That went down to the wire.
Talking about a pressure situation, Greg Van Valkenburg had to strike out the final batter with the bases loaded.
To secure the win.
For those of you who might not be familiar with baseball, imagine this. 3 runners on base,
2 outs.
a 1-run lead,
And the entire game.
resting on this one final pitch.
Talk about nerves of steel.
That's the moment.
Every pitcher dreams of.
And he delivered.
But let's not forget about the 60s Chicago Giants.
They also had a close one.
Squeezing past the Fort Myers Cubs with a final score of 7-4. And a big shout out to Lynn Stroll for pitching a complete game
9 full innings, folks.
to secure the win. And to Sean for stepping up big time with 2 hits and 3 RBIs.
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in those offensive fireworks.
But these wins show that
Solid pitching.
and timely hitting can be just as decisive.
Absolutely. And speaking of clutch hitting.
Ooh, I got a story for that.
Right, let's hear it.
We got to talk about Robbie Obrecht from the 60s Kent Mudhens. This guy
What did he do?
hit an inside-the-park grand slam.
Wow. For our listeners who might not be familiar with this feat,
It's a rare one.
picture this. Bases loaded. Obrecht connects with the ball.
Sends it soaring.
The fielders scramble.
They can't make a play.
And before you know it, he's rounded all 4 bases and crossed home plate.
Unbelievable. It's an electrifying play.
Really adds to the legend of this tournament.
And while Rick Engler of the 70s Minnesota Goats might not have gotten the win in his game,
Who knows?
he gave us a defensive masterclass in the field. Oh, yeah, he was diving, leaping.
Snagging line drives.
Sometimes those web gems are just as impactful as a home run.
Oh, absolutely. They can change the momentum of an entire game.
And then there's Casey Howell.
From the 60s Minnesota Twins.
This guy had a day to remember. Finishing with 4 hits, 2 home runs, and a whopping 5 RBIs.
Now, shifting gears a bit,
Okay.
let's talk about some teams that were on an absolute roll. Both the 60s and 70s DuPage Indians,
Had a fantastic day
proving their dominance.
in their respective divisions.
The 70s DuPage Indians shut out the Philadelphia Mustangs.
17-0.
It was like watching a pitching clinic combined with an offensive onslaught.
And not to be outdone, The 60s DuPage Indians clinched a 5-3 victory against the Gray Foxes.
Their consistency was remarkable.
Back-to-back wins like that just show their depth and adaptability.
You're absolutely right. It wasn't just about one player having a hot day. These teams had a game plan.
And they executed it.
Flawlessly.
And while we're talking about impressive team wins, let's give a shout-out to the 70s Sacramento Buzzards.
Oh, yeah. They managed to squeeze out a 6-5 win.
Against the Minnesota Goats, Bill Bradish was their clutch hitter.
Going 2 for 3 with a crucial double.
Those timely hits are what separate the good teams from the great teams.
Speaking of clutch plays, did you see the 70s Wilmington NC Thunder take on the Midwest 9?
Oh, yeah. The final score was 7-3.
And Mike Rossack was the star of the show.
Oh, he went 2 for 3 with a home run and 4 RBIs. Talk about a game changer. And how about the 60s St. Louis Grays?
Yeah, they just kept those runs coming, finishing with an impressive 15-run victory against the Pensacola Salt Bandits.
Doug Moyer was unstoppable.
Going 4 for 5 with 2 homers and 5 RBIs.
It was like he was hitting every pitch out of the park.
Now, let's not forget about the 60s Lansing Blue Jays. They put on quite a show.
Oh, yeah. Defeating the DuPage Wildcats 18-11.
It was a high-scoring affair.
And Dan Stabell was the hero of the day for the Blue Jays.
Finishing with 4 hits, 2 home runs, and 5 RBIs.
Talk about a power hitter in his prime.
It seems like November 13th was the day for home runs and big hits.
Oh, it really was.
And speaking of big wins, the 60s Pittsburgh South Hills team really brought the heat, dominating the St. Louis Patriots 14-4.
The Patriots just couldn't find their groove against that South Hills pitching.
No, they couldn't.
And the result was a resounding victory.
Yeah, and then there's the 70s Tallahassee Classics, who secured a solid 14-7 win against the Kenmore Eastern Brewers.
It was a tough battle,
But the Classics ultimately prevailed.
demonstrating their resilience and determination.
Jerry Markovich and Jim Nice from the Brewers both had solid games.
But it just wasn't enough to overcome the Classics' offensive firepower.
Sometimes you just gotta tip your cap to the other team and say, well played.
You know, what's really striking is how much variety we saw in how these teams achieved victory.
Yeah.
Some were offensive powerhouses.
Others relied on clutch pitching and timely hitting.
It just goes to show that there's no one formula for success in this tournament.
That's what makes it so captivating.
Every game is a story waiting to be told.
And we're just getting started.
And we've got plenty more stories to unpack. Don't go anywhere, because we're just getting warmed up with our deep dive into the Roy Hobbs World Series action from November 13th. We'll be right back with more exciting highlights and insights after a quick break.
Welcome back, everyone. We're diving right back into the heart of the Roy Hobbs World Series action. With more incredible moments and nail-biting finishes from November 13th, are you ready to hear about some more clutch plays?
Absolutely. Speaking of clutch,
Yeah.
you just know I love a good home run story. And this one's a beauty. Tim Kostelnik from the 70s Team America launched one out of the park, adding 3 RBIs to his tally in their game against Lehigh Baseball. Talk about a momentum swing.
It's those big hits that can really energize a team.
Oh, yeah.
Kostelnik's performance definitely put Team America in a commanding position. And while we're talking about game-changing plays, let's revisit that incredible moment from the 70s Kent Muddins game.
Oh, yeah.
I'm talking about Greg Van Valkenburg striking out the final batter with the bases loaded, securing a 10-9 win over the San Antonio Texans. Can you imagine the pressure?
Oh, absolutely. That's the kind of situation that separates the good from the great Van Valkenburg. Showed incredible composure and focus in that moment. And his ability to deliver under pressure is a testament to his skill and mental toughness. Those are the moments that fans live for, and they're what make baseball such a captivating sport. Now, not every game was a blowout.
Hey.
Some teams had to fight tooth and nail for every run, and we saw some real nail-biters that could have gone either way.
You're right. One game that comes to mind is the 60s Chicago Blues 14-13 victory over the right field Reds.
Oh, wow.
It was a back-and-forth battle with both teams trading blows, and Lance Eggerman was a standout performer for the Blues.
What did he do?
He went 3 for 4 at the plate, stole 3 bases, and played some stellar defense behind home plate.
Wow, he really did it all for his team.
It's those well-rounded performances that often make the difference in close games. Eggerman showed his versatility and athleticism, impacting the game in multiple ways. And speaking of well-rounded players, did you see Steve Bartek from the 60s Keystone Hawks?
Oh, yeah, they soared past the Akron Brewers 17-3.
And Bartek played a huge role in that victory.
Oh, he was phenomenal.
Yeah.
Not only did he go 2 for 3 at the plate with a sacrifice of walk and 3 RBIs, but he also pitched 7 strong innings, giving up only 2 earned runs.
That's the kind of two-way performance that you don't see every day.
It's like he was determined to carry his team to victory single-handedly. And while we're on the subject of impressive wins, the '70s Baltimore Baseball Club cruised past the St. Louis Legends 14-4. One of their players had a phenomenal game, going 3 for 5 with 2 home runs and 5 RBIs. Talk about a power display.
It was an offensive clinic, and on the other end of the spectrum, we had some incredibly close games that kept everyone on the edge of their seats. The '70s Florida Storm barely edged out the '70s Maine Woods Baseball 6-5.
Just by 1 run.
Ken Barnowski had a solid game for Maine Woods Baseball, going 2 for 4 with an RBI and a run scored. But sometimes a few key plays can make all the difference.
Absolutely. Baseball can be a game of inches. And that game was a perfect example of that. And speaking of teams putting up some impressive numbers, the '60s Alabama Bandits had a doubleheader against the Minnesota Twins and walked away with 2 decisive victories.
Wow. What were the scores?
22-3 and 22-2. Talk about a statement. Rick Bruce had a great first game, going 2 for 4 with an RBI and a run scored. They were just unstoppable that day.
It's those kinds of performances that send a message to the rest of the tournament. The Alabama Bandits are here to play, and they're a force to be reckoned with. And let's not forget about the '60s Nova Scotia Monarchs. They also secured 2 victories, defeating the New Jersey Wonder Boys 18-12 and then again 18-11.
They were on fire. Their player of the game in the second matchup against the Wonder Boys was phenomenal.
What'd he do?
Racking up 2 home runs, 5 RBIs, and 3 runs scored. It was a hitting clinic. Now onto a game that was all about pitching dominance.
Ooh, I like those.
The '70s St. Louis Patriots shut down the Cincinnati Colt, .45s winning 12-1. The Patriots pitching was just lights out that day. And the Colt .45s just couldn't find a way to break through.
It was a masterful performance on the mound. And last but not least, we can't forget about the '60s Philadelphia Cutters. They completely demolished the Cleveland Carps, winning 16-2.
Oh, it was a complete team effort. Their bats were on fire, and their pitching was equally impressive. They really showed why they're a team to watch in this tournament. One of their players even had a standout performance that was instrumental in their win.
It's clear that November 13th was a day filled with incredible individual performances and exciting team victories. It's what makes the Roy Hobbs World Series such a special event. There's a sense of passion and dedication that you just don't see everywhere.
It's inspiring to witness these athletes giving it their all game after game. And we're not done yet. We still have more to share from this incredible day of baseball. And we're back for the final stretch of our deep dive into November 13th at the Roy Hobbs World Series.
Yeah.
And man, what a day it was. Flowouts, nail-biters, incredible comebacks.
And those individual performances.
Oh, unforgettable.
You know what really struck me, though, was the level of sportsmanship.
And camaraderie.
On display. Win or lose, these players just have a deep respect for the game.
And for each other.
It's something you don't always see, you know, in the world of competitive sports. And it's truly refreshing.
Absolutely. And that's what makes the Roy Hobbs World Series so special.
It really is.
It's a celebration of the love of the game.
Absolutely.
And it brings together players and fans from all walks of life.
It's more than just a tournament. It's a community.
It really is. And speaking of community, we can't wrap up this episode without giving a huge shout out to the amazing staff here at Roy Hobbs.
Especially Mark and Bonnie.
They pour their hearts and souls into making this event happen.
And their dedication is truly inspiring.
They're the unsung heroes of the Roy Hobbs World Series.
Yeah.
And we're so grateful for everything they do. And to all our listeners out there, if you're loving this deep dive into the action,
make sure to like and subscribe.
For more updates from the tournament, we'll be back with more exciting highlights, insightful analysis,
and stories from the diamond.
But as we wrap up, I want you to consider this. What does it take to create a championship team? Is it raw talent, individual brilliance, or is it something more? Teamwork, strategy, mental toughness.
It's the question, isn't it?
It's a question that's been debated for as long as baseball has been played.
And we're seeing all those elements on display right here.
From those clutch hits, to the game-saving catches, to the sheer determination in the faces of these athletes.
They're leaving it all out on the field.
It makes this journey so captivating. We're witnessing history in the making, and we can't wait to see who emerges victorious.
So until next time, keep swinging for the fences.
And keep that passion for the game alive.
Thanks for joining us for another thrilling deep dive into the Roy Hobbs World Series.
We'll catch you next time with more exciting stories from the Diamond.